everyone, and happy holidays from Creative 360. I'm Laura, and I'm here to do the second of our free holiday painting series with you. This little gem we call "'Tis the Season," and I particularly love it because I think it has a simple mid-century modern feel to it. It's an easy little painting that only uses 3 colors, and so we'll get through it pretty quickly. Now remember, you can do this painting with your own supplies, or if you give Creative 360 a call, we'll put a kit together for you, which will include the canvas, which is a 16 by 20, all of the brushes that you need, including the little sponge brush that we're going to use to do the polka dots, as well as the paint you need to complete this project. So if you want us to put the supplies together, just give us a call. Let me go through the list of the things you're going to need to do this painting, just in case you're working on your own. The first is we're using a 16 by 20 canvas. This painting does not have to be done on that type of canvas, but we're doing it on the vertical, and this painting does look best on a more vertical style canvas. You're going to need 3 colors of paint. You're going to need a bright white. Mine's upside down because it's almost empty. You're going to need a bright red, and you're going to need a little bit of black. Not much, because a little bit of black goes a long way. Keep in mind that if you don't like the red color that we've chosen for the ornaments, you can really do anything you'd like. You can use green, blue, you might want to do a mix of colors on this. I, for one, like the simplicity of the one color scheme, but of course your art is up to you. As far as brushes go, you're going to need a larger flat brush to be able to do the background. You're going to need a medium-sized round brush to do the details of the ornaments and the branches. And you're going to need a smaller detail brush to get in here to do the really fine details on the ornament. You're also going to need a pencil to be able to trace the circles for the ornament. And as far as the ornament circles, you probably have something at home that's the right size. I looked around here at 360s, and it turns out one of these solo cups is the perfect size for doing the circles on these ornaments. But the other things I found that were the perfect size are a larger can of beans. That's about the perfect size as well. And I found this little tiny sugar bowl in my kitchen cupboard that's also the right size. So you probably have something in your cupboard that's the right size for these ornaments. They are about 4 inches in diameter if I measure them. Let me show you that. So it's going from the 7 to the 11. So they're about 4 inches in diameter. The little spots in the back are 1 1/4 inches in diameter. You can buy a package of these little sponge brushes at Michael's. Sometimes they have them at the dollar store, but you're going to want the bigger size, the 1 1/4 inch size. So the 3 brushes and the pencil, the foam brush for the polka dots, which by the way you don't have to do, although I really like the way they look, the 3 colors of paint, and something to mix paint on. I like to use paper plates just because I tend to be a little bit of a messy painter, but you can just use a regular china plate as long as you wash the paint off before it dries. You might want to cover yourself with an apron because once acrylic paint dries, it's really hard to get out of your clothes. And make sure you have plenty of paper towels around to be able to dry off your brushes. So go ahead and get your canvas ready, your paints together, your brushes together, some water to wash out your brushes, and we'll get started right away. Welcome back. So you can see that my canvas that I'm starting with isn't white, and I'm going to pretend like I did this on purpose to show you something. I actually started doing this video the other night, and then I got called away to do some other work. And when I first started this, I was kind of going for non-homogeneous, a real kind of not solid look gray background in the back, and I got this by mixing together my gray real haphazardly. But I have to be honest, I kind of decided in the meantime that I don't like it, because one of the things I really love about this painting is its simplicity, and I think this is looking a little too busy. But you might love this, and so the way I got this is by not really mixing my paints together until they were all one color. I'm going to go ahead and go over this because the cool thing about acrylic is once it's dry, you can paint over it with anything. So I've got a lot of white here on my plate. I know it's hard to see because of the glare. Let me see if I can get it in there. Yeah, you probably can't see. I got a big pile of white on this plate and a teeny tiny little bit of black. And I'm just going to start to mix the black in with the white. And I'm going to mix it really, 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 really well because I don't want that variegated kind of ombre look. I want a nice plain gray look. Now, I don't think, ooh, let me see if I can get this to where you can see it. It's so hard with the lighter colors. Oh, there you go. Now you can see. So I don't think that's quite dark enough with the gray. So I'm going to add a teeny little smidge more black. You can't, it's hard to go backwards on the black. Let me just warn you about that. A little bit of black goes a long way is my saying. So just be careful. You can always add more in. It's really hard to get it out though. Okay, I'm liking that a little bit better. I'm going to mix it till it's all homogeneous. Then I'm going to start to cover the background of my canvas. You're going to want to use nice, clean strokes in one direction. I like to go on the horizontal when I paint these backgrounds, but you can certainly go on the vertical. There's no rule about this. The one thing I would remind you is you're going to want to paint the edges of your canvas, both the top, bottom, and the sides. And the reason you want to do that is if you do hang it up on the wall, you won't need to put it in a frame and it'll still look finished and professional. If you leave the edges white, it doesn't look quite as professional. It's probably not as important on a picture like this where the background is so light colored. But if you're doing a picture, say, that has a black background, like our other free class, the Silent Night class, it just looks really funny if you don't finish the painting off by coating the sides and the bottom as well. All right, so mine is actually going pretty quickly because I already had that coat of gray on the background. It's almost like a primer coat. You may be finding that it takes you a little bit more paint to cover. That's fine. If you need to mix more, that's okay. I always like to kind of use what I have mixed for this foreground, and if I end up having to mix a little bit more to do the sides and the top, and it's not quite the same shade of gray, it doesn't really matter as much because no one's going to be looking at the side of your painting and going, oh, that's not really the same color as the front. Well, they might, but if they do that, you should tell them that they're not allowed to come to your house anymore. So again, I want a nice even coat on this. I really did think I was going to like that ombre look before, but as I said, I really like the simplicity of this painting, and I felt like having that busy background kind of took away from that. I'm going to go ahead and do my sides. I'm not going to worry so much about my sides because they're already gray from my earlier painting, but you are going to want to get your sides. You are going to want to get the bottom and the top as well. Go ahead and mix more paint if you need to cover everything. And before we get started on the next part of this painting, we need to make sure that the background is completely dry. The easiest way for you to do this is with a blow dryer. I just want to tip this forward so you can see that I have a nice even coating now. So we're going to take breaks when it's time to dry the painting, and I'm going to give you time to do that, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do when we come back. So once you have a nice clean coating of this on the whole front, the top, bottom, and sides, you're going to want to dry it with a blow dryer. You may find some spots that you missed once you dry it. That's fine. Just go in and touch it up, dry it again. And when you come back, we're going to get ready to sketch the branch and figure out where we want our ornaments. So you'll want to make sure that you have your pencil handy. All right, go blow dry your background. Welcome back. So your canvas should be covered and all dry now, and I lied to you a little bit because I said we were going to do branches, but I forgot about the polka dots. So you need to find your little sponge, and we're going to mix the color for the polka dots. Now, I'm not sure how well you can see here, but if you compare, say, the polka dots to the white of the ornament, you can see that the polka dots aren't really a pure white. They're really a light gray. And so what I did is I took the same plate that I was using to do my background color, and I put a big bunch of white on it and mixed it in. So it's mostly white with a little bit of gray. I've also got some water in there. So I used my brush from the background, which was sitting in my water, to clean off, put it in the white paint. And so I've not just got white paint, but I have white paint and water. Now, you might want to practice with this sponge a little bit first so you can get a look that you like. These sponges are normally used for stenciling, and so people put the paint on it and then they dab on the stencil so that the paint doesn't go underneath the stencil. but we really want to get a nice circle look here. So you might want to try a few different techniques. Notice that you don't want to just plunk it into the paint because the whole thing won't cover. You might want to get it a little wet first, and then you can plunk it into the paint. Right, and now I've got some better coverage. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. I'm going to do this on the piece of construction paper. If I just dab it straight on, I get a look that's not like quite full. If I dab it and twist, I get a different look. So again, that first circle is just dabbing straight on. The second circle is dab and about a quarter twist. So I'm going to go for the dab and quarter twist because I want that full coverage. Again, dab and a little quarter twist, dab and a little quarter twist. And I'm pushing pretty hard on this brush. So I like that look of those three. But you might like this kind of lacy look, more less full. And so that one is just going to be a straight dab and dab and dab. Right? So let me show you up close again. Right? Those three on the upper left, on your upper left are dab and twist, and then the one on the right and the three on the bottom are just straight dabbing. So get yourself a paper towel or maybe a piece of newspaper or just something, and get a little practice on this, and then you'll know exactly how you want this to look. Okay, so the other thing I want you to notice is that these polka dots are in lines, but they don't line up straight underneath each other, right? They line up in the space underneath each other. So I've got one in between these two, I've got one in between these two, and it varies on the way down. And I didn't measure this out to get the distance in between. I just kind of eyeballed it. But so take your time. You could use your pencil to draw a little bit of a pencil line to keep it straight. I wouldn't worry too much about it because I think it looks nice if it's a little bit off. But if you really want it to be straight, you might even want to take a ruler, right, which you could use as a guideline, and you could hold it under your paper to make sure you're following it in line. All right? So again, I'm going to get some water and paint right on here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get my sponge brush covered with that paint, and I'm going to start dabbing and twisting on the way all the way over the canvas. This is going to be easier for me to do if I turn my back to you, so I apologize for that. I'm going to start in the upper corner, right, and I'm going to give one, and I'm going to give myself enough space in between them so that I have room for the one underneath. Again, I'm just kind of eyeballing it. And this one. Right, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm going to go ahead and grab some more paint and do the second row. The first two rows are probably the trickiest because you'll kind of get the hang of it and the spacing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go here, here, 3, and 4. But I'm not done yet because there would be one right here on the edge. So I'm going to do a little half right there. And there might be a tiny bit of one there as well. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do my second row. Getting more paint on there. Again, don't be afraid to add more white. It's not that important when you do these that you're using exactly the same color of light gray all the way around. In fact, it probably looks a little bit more interesting if you got a little bit of difference in there. So again, I'm gonna get about the same distance. And again, I'm just giving a little twist, maybe a quarter twist when I push this sponge brush down. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and finish putting my dots down the whole canvas. You do that as well. Get that sponge brush in the water when you're done with it so you'll have it to use again at some point. And then we're going to blow dry this canvas so that all the dots are dry. And then we're going to go in and put in the branches. So dab away. Isn't that a dance? Okay, we're back. We're all polka dotted up and ready to go. I just want you to notice that this is not perfect because I don't want you to get all worried if you feel like you're not in line. I mean, check this out. These guys should be in a straight line and they're not too bad, but these guys are kind of all over the place. So don't worry about it, right? No one's going to notice it. No one's going to be measuring the spaces in between your polka dots. My polka dots on this particular picture are a lot whiter than they were on this one. I didn't mix as much of the gray or black in. And so I'm going to be really interested to see how this looks compared to this one. They're a little more subtle in this picture. You can go over them, right? So if you got polka dots that looked like mine and you thought, oh, I would like those to be a little bit grayer, by all means, mix up some gray, get that sponge, and just go over those polka dots. You can do that. I like it, and so I'm ready to go. And so I'm going to draw in my branches. And I just want to show you on our original, give you some idea of where they are. So this larger branch, which is the one that the ornaments are hanging off of, it is not quite in the center of the painting. The center would be right about here. So it's a little higher than the center and kind of swoops down to the center. Right? So what we're going to do is just kind of get this main swoop of the branch. And then we're going to do another one about halfway, maybe not even quite to the top of the canvas, and another just an interesting swoop. So I don't want you to worry about getting to all these little branches in yet. I just want you to get this kind of main S curve of this branch. It's going over and up, and I want you to get the main curve of this branch, okay? You're just going to draw it in with your pencil. So I'm going to look at my canvas here. This is about halfway, so I'm going to start my first branch here, and I'm just going to pencil in nice big swoopy branch right there. So that's my swoopy branch, and then up here I'm going to do another one that swoops in and kind of comes up. Notice I didn't get that spot all the way dry, so bad me. So I just want to know, I kind of get an idea of where to start those. I hope that you probably can't see because it's gray on gray, but here's my first swoop. And here's my second swoop, and I'm not going to draw the rest of those branches in. I'm just going to let it come, right? So these branches are done in a really, really dark gray, almost black, and then we're going to layer the lighter things on top of it so it looks like snow. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put some black on my paint. I'm actually going to use the plate that I had my original white on where I was mixing the white in to make my little dabs. Because, you know, I don't want pure black. I want a little bit of gray, so it doesn't matter if it blends in. I do want this to be pretty dark, though, so I'm not going to mix too much white into this. And I'm going to do this, and this is your choice. You can either use your medium-sized round brush for this, or you can use your big brush. I'll show you both. I personally like the big brush, but if you want more control, you might want to use the small brush. So I'm going ahead and mixing up some pretty dark gray. Again, don't worry if you mix this completely because we have a lot of color variation in those branches. And I'm just going to go ahead and give myself, I'm actually even going to add a little water into this so my paint is nice and flowy. And I'm just going to paint in the first layer of that swoop. So I'm going to get this first swoop right in here. And then I'm going to get my swoop up on top, just so I get an idea of where I'm going. Okay? Now I'm going to think about putting those little branches in. So I've got this one here. I'm going to go ahead and take one kind of across from there. So I'm going to start here and maybe go up. And maybe there's another little one that comes up from there. I'm going to have one come down here. I'm going to have another small one come down here. And then up on the top here, I'm going to put one right about there, I think. And then I'm going to take this over there. All right? So I just kind of have it laid out. Now, you can continue to go in there with this small round brush and just thicken these up. You can see that I would say our branches are about 1 inch thick and this is really thin. So you can take your small round and go in here. But this is where I actually like to use the edge of this flat. This is one of my favorite brushes in the world because you can do so many things with it. I love the fact that if I stick this in the gray paint and get the paint on the edge like that, I can go in and get a pretty nice heavy line with this that I can make thinner at the end, and I can pick up a lot of paint on this and still kind of thin it out at the end just by lifting up the brush. I love this brush. I do. I'm having a love affair with this brush, right? So again, we want to kind of let it just kind of pick up off the end to give us that look of branches. I'm going to go ahead. I still have enough paint on this brush to head up here. And I'm going to give some more thickness to these guys. I'm going to go ahead and pull this together here. And again, the focus on this painting really isn't the branches. If you think about what you first saw when you looked at this painting, you noticed the ornaments, right? You didn't notice the branches. All right, so I like this. I'm going to make this guy a little thicker right through here. Again, if you're happier and you feel like you have more control using that small round brush, but by all means, that's exactly what you should do. You might want to get a few more branches in here. You can see this guy's got a little one coming off here. It looks like I probably have enough in there. Now I'm going to start to add some of the layers up there. So I'm going to pull in some of the gray that I was using before. I hate wasting paint. I really do. So I'm going to pull in some of that lighter gray and just kind of go over the top of this. Just kind of picking it up, right? So it's not a heavy line. I'm just going to kind of draw it in. This is really hard for me to do when I'm standing on the side. I don't have that much control. And I'm going to do the same thing up here. Just putting in some lighter gray to give it some dimension right there. So now I've got a little bit more dimension in those branches. And I'm going to let that dry a little bit. And then I'm going to put some white on, because you can see we have some white on those branches that almost looks like snow that's on the branches. But I'm going to let this gray dry a little bit until I do that. In the meantime, I'm just going to stick my brush into the water and I can start deciding where I want my ornaments to go. So hopefully you found something that's the right circle size. I'm going to use this Solo cup. And you can see on this painting that probably the most important thing is that these aren't really lined up. This one's even just a tiny bit lower than this one is here. And that gives a little bit more interest to the painting than if they were just doink, 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 right? So we want them a little bit off. You can also see that they're not centered on the canvas. This one's not in the center, it's slightly over to the left, and that gives it some interest as well. So as you think about the placement of these ornaments, don't think too hard about getting everything symmetric. I think you're gonna like the look of it better if it's a little bit off. I'm gonna actually start with this ornament, right, and kind of find the place for this ornament, and then I'm gonna think about filling these two in. So as I look at my canvas here, I know this is the center of my canvas, and so I'm going to move slightly over. And you can see this ornament's about an inch up from the bottom of the canvas. So if that's the center, I'm going to move slightly over on this, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trace a circle around this for me to follow. I don't know about you all, but I'm not really a big fan of painting on an easel. I'd really like to have my canvas flat on the table, but you wouldn't be able to see what I was doing if we did that. So there I've got the circle for my first ornament. Let me hold that up for you. I think you can see it right there, okay? Now based on that one, I think I'm gonna have one that's kind of up here, and then I'm gonna have one that's slightly down here. So I think I'm gonna draw this one in next. Canvas keeps clunking back. So again, just a light pencil line for me to be able to follow. And then the third one is going to be a little bit higher and over on this side, and so I'm going to put it right here. I'll knock this easel over at some point. So you can see that my placement, right, I have one here, I have one down here, and I have one over here. Yeah? Okay. Well, now this should be drying a little bit, and by the time we do the next step, we'll be ready to put the snow on that, because the next step involves white. We're going to paint all of these circles with our white. We're going to fill the whole thing in with white. Why, you might say? I want my ornaments to be red or blue or whatever. Yes, of course you do, but white serves as a really nice primer, and the way we're going to get these really bright red colors is by putting white down first. It turns out red is kind of a translucent color with acrylics. It's very odd. Reds and greens, they tend to be pretty see-through. Sometimes it's nice. In fact, we're doing a painting on a wood plank that I'll show you before we go tonight called Spruced Up. It's very cute. It's a little red ornament hanging off of a pine tree, kind of similar to this, but on a whitewashed plank. And in that one, we like the translucence of the red. But for this painting, we want the red to be nice and solid. And so putting a coat of white down is going to help that. So I'm going to take my medium round brush, and I'm just going to go in here, and I'm going to fill in, oh, I hate that this canvas keeps slipping. I'm going to fill in all of these circles. And I'm just going to kind of try to get a nice edge around that circle, and then I'll fill in. Don't worry if it's perfect. Those are not perfect circles for my ornaments over on the other side. I know they look pretty good, right? That's because the painting's got enough detailed interest in it that you don't know those, you can't even notice those little parts that are slightly off. So again, I'm going to get in here with my round brush. I'm going to go around the outline of this circle, and then I'm just going to color it in, right? So I'm just going to fill in. Got a little bit of pencil showing here, so I'm going to come up to meet it, and I'm going to fill this all in with white. You could even get your big brush back out if you wanted to use that to do this fill in with the white. Don't worry about brush strokes showing, although you'd like to get it kind of as smooth as possible because it'll look the nicest when you put the next coat on. Again, that's part of the reason I like that big flat brush, is that it gives me nice wide strokes. Elise Noble, who is our art shop coordinator here and a very fine artist, has been my teacher for watercolor for a long time, and one of the things Elise always says is you want to use the biggest brush possible, and that's part of the reason why, because you don't really want to see these strokes filled in. So I know it looks really funny to you right now because it's got those spots poking out the sides, but you see that I'm filling those in all the way with white. I'm going to go ahead and get my bigger brush clean, and I'm going to go in and give some more white. You might even want to do 2 coats of white on these ornaments before you go on. But let me show you the other piece that we're going to want to get done before we get ready to start doing the fun part where we put in the colors on these ornaments. I'm going to take my big flat brush again with some watered down white on it. So I put some water into this white, and I'm going to just go lightly over the tops of these branches like they would look if there was snow on them. There'd be snow in between here, right? Just light coating of white kind of coming in, gives it some depth and some interest. This is what it would look like if there was snow on the branches. If you don't like it, if you feel like you got too much white in, I feel like I might have gotten a little too much white in right here, I can just go back in with my dark gray and I can go over it. So no worries there, blending it in, right? So just to get some nice dimension on those branches so that they're not just so flat. So again, I'm going in with the white to kind of put the snow areas. So again, when we come back, you're gonna have all of your ornaments filled in with at least 1 coat of white paint so they're nice and flat and primed. And you're gonna have your branches done with the snow coating on it and some kind of interest in it. Hair dry it all so that it's ready to go on to the next step, which is the fun part because we're going to put the designs in our ornaments. There's one more small thing I want to show you on the base coat of these ornaments before we move on to doing the designs. So you can see that in my original painting, right, this is the part of the ornament, right, that you put the hook into, that part, that little square part that sticks up. And you can see that I just incorporated it into the design of my ornament. But you might want to do it more, right, like an ornament like this one that has the gold or the silver on top. Your choice. But we are going to want to put a tiny little rectangle on the top of each ornament. Even if you're going to do it in gold or silver, you might want to put the white down as a base coat. I'm going to leave mine along with the ornament. But again, just right in the center there, a tiny little rectangle. It's not even a ½ an inch tall. That's going to be kind of the part where the ornament gets hung. So don't forget to put that on. All right, my ornaments are primed and ready to go. I'll show you that I actually ended up putting 3 coats of white paint on these because I wanted there to be nothing showing through, and I know how much trouble I can have with this red covering. I'll show you that we actually, the paint we get here at 360, we get Blix, which is a good quality paint. We get kind of medium grade. If you have excellent artist paints you're working with, you may have been able to cover with your white with 2 coats. We actually use a paint that's called Blackout White, and the whole point of this paint is to be able to put a primer on any color that's there so you can go over it. So it took 3 coats of this though for me to be happy. Don't be afraid to put too many on. It's kind of one of those things where if you don't put the time in the beginning, you're not maybe going to be happy with the color. So we're going to get ready to go ahead and put the designs on our ornaments. And you don't have to follow my lead here. You may want to go on the internet and look up some cool designs of some mid-century modern ornaments. Maybe you want to copy some of the ornaments you have in your own home. It would be really cute, I think, if one of these ornaments had a special message on it. For example, on my Christmas tree at home, I have a big red ornament that says First Christmas in our new home, 1991. And how cute would it be to make this painting for someone who just purchased their home and they're having their first Christmas, to write like a little message on this that says First Christmas in your new home, or baby's first Christmas, or something like that. So you don't have to have it just be generic like this. You can do whatever you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do these couple of patterns. This one's one of my favorite because it kind of reminds me of a Christmas sweater pattern. But I'm just saying that you should not feel limited by these designs here. All we're going to do is we're going to go in with our pencil and kind of lightly trace out where we want this to go. I'm not going to put too many pencil lines in here. I'm just going to let my brush kind of do the work. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with this guy in the middle, this ornament in the middle here. And you can see that, right, I've just kind of got a swoosh that goes through. And so I'm going to go ahead on my canvas. I'm going to start this line and take it around to the side. Now, the only thing that I think you have to do on this one, if you like this design, is this first line that I put down. You can see it right here. Maybe you can. There you can see it. I just need all my other lines to line up with it. I hate to use the term parallel because the mathematicians out there would say, well, they're not straight, so they can't really be parallel. But you know what I mean. We're going to want the same distance between the next line and that line along the whole thing. So I'm going to go ahead over here, and I'm going to start to follow the same curve of that line that I just drew. And that's going to be this line right here. And then I'm going to put another one in that's a little bit closer, but following the same curve. And then finally, I'm going to do my last one on the bottom here, following the curve. Now, it's not perfect, right? I'm a little bit off, but I can kind of fix that a little with the paint. Like, I think I might have a little bit too much space, but I could just make this one a little wider if I need to do that. All right, so I have that one sketched in. This guy, I have the zigzags on. I think it might look cute on this one to do just straight lines across, or even some lines coming down that you sometimes see in those ornaments from the 60s. I'll go ahead and go with the same theme I have over here, but again, use your imagination. So I'm going to start with the zigzag in the middle. I'm actually going to make a little wider zigzag on this one than I have on my original, just to see how it goes. Okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and fill in this one underneath it. Then I'll have a little bit more down here. And I'll have another one right here. And I'll finally have one more that goes across the top here. Okay? Then this ornament is going to get painted all in red first before we put the design in white. So I have the zigzags in red to paint on this ornament. I have the stripes in red to paint on this ornament. And I'm going to paint this whole thing in red. Now, I'm going to probably do the same thing I did with the other one. I'm going to start with my medium-sized round brush and just plain old red paint. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to trace kind of the outlines of these and then fill in. So I'll go ahead and start over here. I'm going to start in the middle Why am I going to start in the middle, you say? Well, because the middle doesn't really have as much edges on the ornament, and so if I'm going to mess up or kind of play around a little bit, this is a place where I can make the fewest mistakes. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of follow those straight lines. Now this red that I'm using here is called Fire Red. There's a lot of different colors of reds. I would say this one's a pretty orangey red, actually. Not even really that Christmassy of a red. Christmas reds tend to be a little bit bluer. I know that sounds weird to say, but there's a lot of different reds. Now you can see, even as I'm painting this in here, that what I mean about the red coverage, right? And let me show it a little closer to you. So that's my first coat of red, and it's not covering very well. It would be a lot harder for us to get a clean color on this if we were trying to paint it over that gray that we had in the background before. So at least with the white, even though it's not covering perfectly, it's kind of an even on imperfect cover, if that makes any sense. It's not looking blotchy. Like if we hadn't filled this in with white, where we had the circles would look like a different color red than where we didn't have the circles. And this way, it's at least looks the same everywhere. I'm guessing we're going to need to have at least 2 coats of this red on our ornaments. The first one is the hardest one because we really want to get all the way over to the edge here. Oops, I made a little mistake. I shouldn't have gone so far with the red here. Let me show you. See that on the edge? I don't like that, but that's okay, because once this dries, I can go in with the white and I can touch it up with my little detail brush. So again, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to do all of the zigzags on this one. And again, I know this is going to take at least 2 coats, if not more. But that's okay, because one of the cool things about you doing this on video is there's no rush. I mean, heck, you could even decide partway through this, I've had enough. It's time for me to go watch a Hallmark Christmas movie. And you could just leave it there to dry on its own. You wouldn't have to hair dry it. You can come back an hour later and think about finishing it up. We're not rushing you like you sometimes feel rushed when you come to a class. I don't know about you, but I always feel like I need a little bit more time than they give me at a class. I'm a little bit of a pokey painter. I always go with one of my very best friends. Her name is Mary, and she's like a speed painter. And it's so funny because hers always comes out the very best. And I always think, how can it come out so good when she's so fast? But I guess she just knows what she's doing more than I do. So I've got that zigzag filled in. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the top zigzag. But you get the idea for the zigzag. With this guy, it's going to be the same thing, right? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this middle stripe first, just following that curve. This one's actually a little easier, I think, than the zigzag. That's why I think it might be fun to do that ornament with some stripes. And remember, I said I was going to maybe do this middle one a little bit fatter, so I'm not going to worry about kind of going outside the line of this curve. Fill that in a little bit, I think, because I went a little fatter. I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. Now, you might say, well, if the red's not covering, why don't we just load a lot more paint on our brush? And you can, but the thing is, it's the layers of color that's going to make it less transparent. And so that's why we blow dry it in between. Once we get a nice dry surface, then we can layer another layer of paint on. So you can get the idea of where I'm going with the stripes on this one. And then with this one over here, as I mentioned to you, we want to fill the whole thing in with the red paint. So I'm going to go in with my brush and I'm going to fill it all the way in. You want to get all the way up to the edge of that white that you put in as a primer. In fact, you will want to go over it instead of leaving any white sticking out. What do I mean by that? Well, if you look really closely on that right edge of this red ornament, you can see where I went outside of the white primer, but I bet you didn't even notice that until I showed it to you. So you're better off, but I'll tell you what, if I leave it like this, look at the left side of that ornament, you're gonna see that white poking out on the side if you don't go far enough. So fill this whole thing in with the red. we're gonna get all of our first coats of these on. We're gonna dry them, and then we're gonna go back and do exactly the same thing. Paint all the zigzags, paint all the stripes, paint another coat of plain red on this one, and then we'll move on to the next step, which is the white designs on the red ornament. Remember, you'll want at least 2 coats, dry it well in between. You might want 3 coats. You might want 3. Don't skimp on it, right? You want this to come out the way you want it to come out, so don't skimp on it. If it takes 3 coats, it takes 3 coats. So I'm gonna finish this first coat, dry it, put my second coat on. When I come back, I'm gonna be ready to do the white designs on the all red ornament, the sweater designs. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so 3 coats of red paint later, we're back. Yep, I did put 3 coats of red paint on my ornaments. I didn't like the coverage I was getting after 2 coats. However many coats you needed to put on are going to depend a lot on the kind of paint you're using. If you got paint from us, you probably got this type of paint. And it's a gloss acrylic paint, and so it has a nice shiny look when you're done, but sometimes it takes a few more coats to cover. If you've purchased your own paint, you may have got one of these little bottles, say from Michael's or Walmart. These are great paints. This one is the Apple Barrel brand. I believe they have this at Walmart, and you probably have seen the smaller bottles too. But these are matte acrylics, and that means they're not shiny. In fact, if you look at this painting, my original, these are from my own paints at home, and these are not shiny paints. I kind of like the matte acrylics for painting, especially something like this. So I probably didn't have to put as many coats of paint on that because the matte acrylics cover better. I'm not actually sure they do cover better. The scientist in me knows that it's a lot about how the light reflects and the evenness of the surface. The matte paints don't reflect the light, and so it looks like they cover better with fewer coats. So keep that in mind. If you're working with these matte paints, you might maybe only needed 2 coats to cover it. Anyway, you got to do as many coats as you need to. And so we're in kind of the last stages now, and we want to have our small little detail brush out. You may have a rounder detail brush than I'm using, and most people would prefer these kind of round detail brushes. You might not be surprised that I'm kind of a fan of these flat detail brushes for the same reason I like that big flat brush, because I like the little edge of this brush. Either kind you have is going to work really well. So what do we have left to do? We need to do the designs on this ornament. We need to fix up any schmooges that we got on the other ones. You can remember that one I had over here. Not loving it, but I'm going to have the white paint out, so I'm going to be able to fix that. And then the last thing we need to do is we need to draw the little hangers that are hanging the ornaments from the limbs, and we'll do that with either a dark gray or black paint. So let's go ahead, and I've got a little bit of white on my plate. I do have clean water as well because we're going to mix some water in with the white to thin it out a little bit. You don't want to use your old red water, or you're going to have pink on your ornaments unless you want pink on your ornaments, and then maybe that's a good idea. So you can see I'm going to follow this same pattern I did on this ornament. It's alternating bigger stars and little stars. They're all 6 lined stars, but these guys in the middle have 4 fat lines and then 4 skinny lines. I'm sorry, 4 and 4 is 8, not 6. They're all 8 pointed stars with 4 of the smaller ones and 4 of the bigger ones. These big guys, they're pretty even. And then we got these little dots in between that we're going to add at the end. So I'm going to start with this line of small stars across the middle because it's a nice, good kind of grounding point for me. Let me tell you a little secret. When I go off camera and I say, hey, meet me back after we're painting, like when we did the red, I take this off the easel and I put it flat on the table. One of the things I like about working flat on the table is that I don't just have to paint this way. I can turn my canvas around to be able to get at other sides that are harder to get when I'm painting straight on. I mean, that's kind of the cool thing about working flat on is you can turn this canvas any way. Now, I can still do that if I'm working here. I bet you never really thought about that. Sometimes it's easier to work on your painting if your canvas is turned a different way. But when I'm off camera, I'm putting it on the table. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this line. It's not quite in the middle, but it's close to being in the middle. I'm going to get a little bit of water on my brush so I can thin this white out just a little bit. Because I can always go over it a second time if I need to, but if I get a star that's too fat, I'm not going to love that. And I can go over a fat star with red paint and start over again, but You know how many coats of red paint that's gonna take. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start with this guy right in the middle, this X right in the middle, and we'll go from there. So I'm gonna do the cross lines first. So I have one here and one here, and then I have one here and one here. Right, so I'm gonna start with those cross lines. So there's my first one. And I'm gonna put the rest of those in evenly spaced before I add the thinner lines in. So I'm gonna kind of turn my back to you here so I can get these nice and even. So I'm gonna make another X here, and they do kind of come together, they almost touch. And I'm gonna do another one here. And remember, they don't just end because you get at the end, they're gonna kind of run off the edge. Then I'll go down to this side. The other thing that I think is nicer about working on a flat table is that it's easier for me to go straight across when I do that. I might end up going uphill or downhill on these because I'm not working flat, but we'll see, right? And so you can see this one's running off the side a little bit. So I've got this row of X's across. And now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do the bigger X's for the bigger part of the ornaments. And notice they do kind of line up here, right? But you'll notice that for every one of these, there's one of these small ones in the middle, right? So that's how we're gonna space it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the large star that's right underneath this smaller one. So that's a bigger X, like that. And then the next one is going to be under this star, so there'll be a bigger X here. And then the next one's going to be under this star, so there'll be a bigger X here. Okay? And then I'm going to do the same thing on the top. So I'll have a bigger X here. And I'm going to have another one here that's running off the edge. And I'm going to have another one that's here. And now I'm going to add a little bit more water to that so I can get a nice thin line on that brush. And I'm going to go ahead and put in the thinner lines. So just to show you, right, I just have the X parts of those. And I'm going to go ahead and put in the horizontals and the verticals that go along with those. Again, not much paint on my brush because I want a nice thin line. And I'm going to start with those smaller X's and I'm going to put those in. They do kind of run into each other. Don't worry about them being perfect. You're not going to notice. And so I've got the smaller ones there done. And now I'm going to go ahead and put those in for the bigger ones as well. Again, remember that if you don't like the way these turn out, you can go back in there over them with the red paint and you can redo them. That's one of the nice things about acrylic, working with acrylic paints is, that's why they make that blackout white, is because you can go in there and you can cover anything and go ahead and start back over again. So there I have my stars. And now you can see there are a bunch of little dots in there around the big ones. So I have 2 dots in between each of these big ones. And then I have a row of dots on the bottom and a row of dots on the top. You can kind of make this up as you go along. My guess is I put these in as fillers because I probably didn't do my stars close enough and I thought, oh no, it looks like there's a lot of empty space there. So I probably went in and put these dots in as fillers. But I'll pretend that it was all planned. How about that? I'll pretend it was all planned. It's exactly what I wanted it to look like. There we go. Looks like I could probably do one over here. Yep, I like that. It's looking pretty good. So I probably could have used a little thinner brush on that, or maybe thinned out my paint a little more, or put my canvas flat on the table. In fact, I think what I'm gonna do, one of the things I don't like here is that I don't like that the middles look a little sloppy. So I'm gonna go a little rogue on you here, And I'm gonna go ahead and put a dot in the middle of each one of these stars and see what it looks like. So I'm gonna change it up just a little bit. So I'm gonna use my white and I'm gonna put a little round dot in the middle of each star. I think it's gonna tie it together a little bit because I was a little sloppy and I didn't leave the space amongst those. And I do think I like that a little bit better. So that's what I just did. I like that a little bit better, I think. Okay, we're almost done. I'm gonna take this white paint while I have it, and I'm gonna fix that little smudge I had over here where I went a little too far over. And that's better. I think everything's looking pretty good. Maybe a little touch up right there. You might wanna go over these stars one more time before we finish up, but totally up to you. And again, if you don't like the way they turned out, you can always put another coat of red over the top of them and start all over again. The last thing we need to do is we need to hang our ornaments from the branches. I still have a little bit of this dark gray that I was using to do the branches, but it's starting to dry up a little bit. So I'll maybe add a little bit of water to it, but I'm gonna pull a little more black into that too, just so that it's running a little more. This work honestly works better with that rounder small detail brush that probably came in your kit if you got your supplies from us. That flat brush, I think I'm one of the only people that really likes working with that. To make dots, this round brush is better. So remember, we want to go straight up to the branch on these, and if you remember what our original looks like, it's just a row of dots so that it looks like a chain, and they're fairly evenly spaced. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start over here on this side, and I'm going to work from the top and the bottom so that I don't get too like whoop, right? I want it to be hanging straight down. What you could do if you wanted to is you could take your pencil and you could do a thin pencil line going straight down from there if you're a little worried that you're going to get it going wonky, right? You don't want to go against the laws of physics with your ornaments hanging down on this thing. So I drew a light pencil line in there. I'm going to start with some dots here on the bottom. Maybe then I'll go up to the top and do a few. Notice I'm not loading my brush up after each one of these. These are pretty small little dots. So I like that. I think that's pretty good. The one hazard you're gonna get if you start from the bottom and then come from the top is you can see I have one dot in here that's a little smaller than the rest of them. Guarantee you no one's gonna notice that. Okay, so 2 more to go. I'm gonna go ahead and do this other short one here. I think I'm happy that I drew that pencil line, and especially since I'm working on the easel. When I work on the easel, everything tends to turn out a little slanted. Go figure. That's why I like working flat on the table. So again, I'm gonna, canvas fell, and so I've got a big splop here, but I'm not even gonna worry about it because it's right down at the bottom of the ornament. I'll just make these blobs, these little dots, a little bigger. Maybe this ornament's got a bigger chain. So see, I got a little splunk there at the top. I don't care. Maybe that ornament's just got a different chain. And then finally, I'll draw in this last one. So again, I want to get a nice straight line. This one's the longest one, so it's probably got the most potential to go a little crooked. So I'm definitely going to draw that line in. Get a little bit more paint on my brush. And again, just one load of paint is probably enough. A little bit of water is not a bad idea to keep it kind of thin. And I'm going to start from the top on this guy. And I will just put those dots in all the way down. This is a pretty long chain, and so it's really going to be important that I get this one going straight down. Might actually need to get a little bit more paint on my brush, although it seems to be working fine. I think I'm going to end up with enough. And there I go. So I've got my 3 chains coming down. And guess what? We're done. We are done with 'Tis the Season. You can go ahead and sign it down in the corner if you'd like to. It might look really cool if you signed it in red. Touch up any of the white you want to, maybe add a little bit more snow to the branches, but nice job, everyone. So come back, and I'm going to come back with you in just a minute. I'm going to show you a few other classes we have coming up that I think you might enjoy. So come back for just a short moment. So one of the bad things about teaching by video is that I don't get to see all the work that you do. So I would love it if you would take a picture of your painting and send it to us at director@becreative360.org, or put it up on our Facebook page. We even like that better because you show the world what wonderful work you could do. So you heard me mention earlier that we have a second free painting class that's already online, and that's this painting right here. This one is called Silent Night, and it's a very simple manger scene that's a very powerful picture actually, and quite simple to do. So you can look for that one on our YouTube channel as well. Like the one you just finished, it doesn't take a lot of different paint colors. In fact, if you just did the one here with us, you already have the black and the white that you need. You just need a tiny bit of blue, a tiny bit of yellow, and a tiny bit of brown. We have two other classes that are paid classes where you will pick the materials up from us because they're kind of special materials, and the class works better if you have the right materials. The first one we ran, the video is available online, and you'll get a link to that when you pay for the class. And this painting is called Angel, and you can see this is actually really beautiful. It's kind of an antique looking angel. This painting is done in acrylics with a palette knife, which is really pretty cool. And the canvas that you get is painted with this beautiful gold paint for you to start with. So again, this one's called Angel. If you call Creative 360, you can purchase the kit, which is the canvas that's pre-primed for you, all of the paints and the palette knife and the brushes that you need to complete this angel. And finally, our newest class, which will be up online this week as well, is called Spruced Up, and this is a really cute whitewashed wood plank that can be used as a holiday hanging. Again, you can see it's got the red ornament theme. I kind of like that, apparently. This one is done with acrylics on this whitewashed wooden plank. And again, you can call Creative 360 and purchase the kit. You'll get the plank, you'll get all the paints that you need, and the brushes that you need as well. So thank you so much for painting with me tonight. I hope you enjoyed our 'Tis the Season painting. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and we hope that you'll come back and do some more classes with us here at Creative 360. Good night.